So, welcome to the show, Marty.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
I
Happy
am,
Women's Day.
yes, happy International Women's Day. We are recording this on that day. It's been an
Yes,
epic day for us here at Let's Talk Supply Chain because we hit 45,000 followers. We had our 100th episode for my live stream show.
I saw
And
that.
now you're here recording with me today for your episode of Women in Supply Chain. And I'm so excited to have you here. I mean, I love what you guys are doing over at Merge. We've had George Abernathy on the show to talk about the platform itself, and it's a really awesome offering. And so I'm happy to have a woman on the show to go behind the scenes a little bit and hear all about your experiences, learn more about your journey, get some advice, and just have some plain old fun. So I think we just need to dive right in. Let's start at the beginning, and that's kind of the best place to start. Tell us about your journey you've been on to get to where you are now. I mean, your education is in international relations, which lends itself really well to supply chain. But was that what you had in mind back then?
Well, yeah, that's a loaded question. Asking someone, what was I, 19, 20? Well, my career did start technically back then when I was in college. I had the opportunity to study abroad, and I was in a program that had me in Japan for over a year. So,
Nice.
yeah, and then that kind of opened up my curiosity about the world, and also, it didn't really get me into supply chain right away. That
Mhm.
I'll explain at some point, I'm sure, but it definitely had me thinking outside of Lansing, Michigan.
Right.
I wanted the big city life. I was very intrigued about what else the world had to offer, and the worldly view. I think that initially I was thinking I would go into international law and or be in some sort of corporation where I could take people from overseas to dinner, to be honest, if you want to know where
Nice.
I thought I was going. But yes, I would say I definitely got my start
Amazing. And so then where did you go from there? Like, what does your journey kind of look like from, that year in Japan all the way kind of until now?
there. So I actually graduated in December from Michigan State and went to Chicago. I moved to Chicago 3 days later. I just was like, I'm out of
I'm
here, and
out.
I was ready for the big city.
Yeah.
And when I got to the city, I essentially was like, okay, so now I need a big girl job. And I went to a temp agency. And at the temp agency, they placed me with a company. And I was determined to do anything I could just to be in the city with the hustle and bustle, taking the trains. And I landed a temp job with a company called Garrett Popcorn. And my family was like, "Oh, what do you mean you're going to go work for a popcorn company?" you know, Turns out they're a big deal, and they actually were on Oprah's Favorite Things show
Oh,
that upcoming Christmas, and
nice.
that's when everyone in Michigan was like, "Hey, do you have the hookup?" And
Don't you love that? They're like,
yeah,
"Oh, what kind of freebies or discounts do you get?"
right. Right. So I kind of, it's really entertaining to me to be with Emerge in a startup because actually that's what Garrett was then. I mean, they were
Right.
only 4 shops on Michigan Avenue, and they was family owned, and I was the receptionist to start, and then slowly, like I think a month later, because they joked about it, I was the customer service manager. I mean, because we
Nice.
were an office of 6 people, so
Mhm.
um, that from that point, taking care of customers was kind of like my niche. I was like involved in, calming people down with their popcorn needs and all of that. Soon after that, they sold the company and a partnership came in, and they had big plans for Garrett. So
Mhm.
the growth really did afford me a lot of opportunity. I was an assistant to operations. I parlayed that into procurement and was able to essentially figure out everything that the company needed in terms of ordering their ingredients, how they
Nice.
were packaged. I was critical to the warehouse development. So once they started fulfillment and e-commerce all came into play, and as they grew, I grew. So I learned kind of in real time about the supply chain, and that's essentially how I got involved in becoming the logistics manager for them.
Well, and what an amazing experience. I think, when I was doing the research for the show, there's some incredible accomplishments there that I don't think that we should skim over. I think you established their supply chains in Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong. You actually also established processes in Abu Dhabi, Thailand, and Brazil. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Walk us through how you did that with really no experience.
Yeah, so I think it all started with just the understanding of what was needed to make a batch of popcorn. I mean, really, that's how simple it was. And then
Yep,
how many bags of this and, pallets of this is needed to open a store.
right.
And then it kind of turned into, okay, so how many, rows of warehouse space do we need? And we need somebody on the ground there that can go and vet out where these warehouses are.
Yep.
Now we worked with a third party logistics brokerage, a freight forwarding company, and I would just go over to. I think I spent 3 weeks and I traveled to Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Thailand, and back through Japan on that trip, and it was amazing. But to your point, I was a little over my head. I was figuring it out as I went, making relationships, building trust, trying to figure out where the warehouse space made sense for us as a
Mhm.
company and how many months of inventory could it hold, and
Right.
working with their procurement side and trying to understand how to clear trailers and excuse me, clear um, containers. And it was an adventure, and it was very valuable to my career. I learned a lot about myself. I was able to, you know essentially try to figure out the communication barriers there.
Mhm.
And yeah, I owe that job my career. I mean, it was just fantastic.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your accomplishments and, really what was going through your head during that time. I mean, we all have moments of imposter syndrome. And I'm sure that you probably had a few moments
That's a
of
good way
that
to put it.
along the way, right?
Well, sure. I think I was just determined not to fail.
Yeah,
I was gonna figure it out, and I was very aware that I was young, and I was
yeah,
very aware that I was a female,
yeah,
and even more so, there's the gap with the supply chain in different countries. So I was very aware that I needed to show that I knew what I was doing, and
right.
I feel like I did it. I definitely was able to get things rolling for the company, and they're still growing today. I will say Brazil was the hardest for me. I think that it was really difficult. I don't even know if we were successful, because when I left, it was not even like I still had stuff that hadn't been cleared through customs that I had shipped, I think, a year and a half prior. So
Yeah.
I would say that was probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, so I love that story because really it shows that as long as you have the right motivation, you can really do anything that you put your mind to, right? And we have a live show called Coming in Hot with Abby Baird. She's a supply chain student and she talks about what it's like to break into a supply chain career as a young person right now. So, do you think there are misconceptions around what young people think supply chain is and what all of the different strands actually are? And how do you think that's changed since you came in the industry?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, I didn't go the route of supply chain through
Mhm.
college.
Right.
Really, I don't even know what they'd be teaching them these days. I do know that I've gained a lot from experience because I kind
Mhm.
of had to take the ground running, and I was introduced just by chance to the supply chain. I will say, you have to be tough skinned. You have to be able to provide solutions. I think negotiating is key to that.
Mhm.
And a lot of young people, if there's not a class of negotiations, I have no idea what they're doing.
That's a good
But
point.
I do manage people that come right out of college. I definitely can tell you that there's not a misconception, but I do think that there's no right or wrong way to solve problems in this industry.
Yeah.
And there's really no way to teach, okay, so you're going to get out of school and you're going to go right over here and then you're going to log into this program and it's going to teach you, there's just no right or wrong way to handle some of the situations that we get in this
Yeah.
industry. But I can tell you that part is teachable. So I think experience is key. I do really appreciate when the students come in and they have a fresh perspective.
Hmm.
They have the tools and the technological ways of thinking, which I can
Yeah.
appreciate because I'm always like, hey, why don't you come show me, how you would figure that out? And I appreciate that being older in the industry. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's so great. I feel the same way about that. And I think it's just about, jumping in and trying it. I mean, you went to college for international relations, and in some respects that does tie into supply chain, right? And so there's a variety of ways and different pathways that people can go that they might not actually realize is intertwined with supply chain. And so it's really just about getting in the industry and sort of
Yeah,
figuring that out for yourself.
I
But
agree.
now you're customer success manager at Emerge. So tell us about the role. What does a day in your life look like?
Oh gosh, no day looks the same. I'll tell you that. Um, every day is different. I do love that about this job. I can come in and solve different problems anywhere from, weather related. I mean, there's lots of disruptions going on, especially now. So you've got right now, we're walking into a situation with fuel. Fuel is at an all time high.
Yep.
We're in the middle of the winter still in a lot of regions. We're working through the tail end, hopefully, of this, pandemic, and so there's not a day that looks like any other. But what I will say is that I manage a team of about 7 account representatives that work with a whole portfolio of customers, and so we work with the customer on the side of understanding the technical side, right? So we're technology first. We have an amazing platform where we're able to aggregate their freight. We're connecting our shippers with, their carriers, and we're allowing them to make decisions about their spend. And so, it really is interesting, and it's the reason why I came on to Emerge. I've never seen another company that does this. So when you're talking about aggregating your freight with our competitors, so where else do you see that being an opportunity for them? So
Very, very
we
true.
work with them, we work with the customers, we provide solutions, and we focus on my team heavily on being transparent, helping the customers understand what these disruptions are and how to get through them.
Amazing. And Emerge is the sponsor of our Woman in Supply Chain series right now. And so tell us about the culture there. I mean, is there a huge, focus on diversity and inclusion, and how do they do that?
So Emerge is a very young, a very fun, energetic place to be in general. So already you have a party on the floor. When you come
I've
in,
noticed that
everyone is
already.
just pumped and they're ready to go. So
Yep.
I would say there's lots of diversity. There is a lot of inclusion. We have a ladies at Emerge here. It's a group where we will get together, we'll do lunches, we'll have
Nice.
speakers. We also have done some happy hours. We're going to be starting a book club. So there's an opportunity for us to get together and really hear each other and kind of work through struggles that maybe we are seeing within um, the industry. But also, I actually really like the opportunity to hear from veterans, people that have paved the way for us. And
Yeah.
when we have speakers, that I think is the most interesting part for me.
Yeah, and I spoke about that earlier today in the fact that there's a lot of knowledge gaps, right? With the baby boomers leaving the industry and leaving the workforce. And so there's a really big importance, right, on focusing on that and having those safe spaces and creating spaces for those conversations. And so, I want to talk a little bit more about customer success, because we've had a couple of people on the show recently, and they talk about the importance of customer experience and how vital it is, particularly with the growth in e-commerce. So, um, tell me more about how you guys do it at Emerge, right? We're hearing more and more about customer success, those two words being put together, as well as like customer experience. And so they're kind of tied into the same thing. So, what do you think about the role of customer success in the market right now?
I think it's truly important to separate yourself from other players in the industry and to
Mhm.
be that one stop shop, right? That easy button. I think that it's important to have a relationship with the customer and to know about them individually from their day to day business. I think that's going to separate you from anyone else because I think if I want to have a conversation with a customer about what they're going to do with their procurement or what they're going to do with their RFP here in May. I think that I would rather ask them about how is their day and know about what's going on and what conflicts they have and work our way to that, right? So, in
Mhm.
order to ask for a business, there has to be a trust there. And I think that the customer really does need to know that you're there for the long haul, not just to get their business.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, I'm just off of TPM, and the focus for that was relationships matter, and it's very, very, very true in this industry, regardless of how many meetings we're doing on Zoom, or
Hmm.
regardless of whether we're working remotely, or we're able to see each other in person, or we're not able to see each other in person. Relationships matter, and I truly felt that through COVID, where I was reaching out to, they weren't even customers, they were just, managers or supply chain professionals, reaching out to them and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" Right? And just making
Yeah.
sure that they know that you care on a very different level. You
Oh,
know
I
what I mean?
agree. People are starving for that interaction. I know I was. I
Yeah.
tried to do the work from home bit and I couldn't do it. I mean, if I had to
Right.
sit in leggings every day for the next year, I just was going to die. I needed to
Sweatpants.
be, yeah, I needed to be around people and collaborate. And
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. I think people are just starving in general.
Yeah, well, and it has been nice to be back in person at industry conferences, I will tell you that much. But
Yeah,
you said the word collaboration, and so
right,
let's take a step back to culture. And because I think, over at Emerge, you put an emphasis on collaboration, right? And I think it's very important for you to be successful in customer success that you're tying together sales, operations, marketing, finance, right?
right.
And everybody's sort of coming together. So, do you think that collaboration is the future of business? And how do you see collaboration playing a really big part?
I definitely do. I think that a perfect example, we work a lot with different groups here at Emerge. We have a product implementation team. We have people giving demos to customers. And then
Mhm.
eventually my team will get involved from the operational standpoint. But it's very important here internally, and our relationships here internally are tied together. And
Yeah.
the customer sees that and they love that we have that big of a team. We have people that are tech experts. They're working on manually building reports that the customer wants to see, and they know that I'm working side by side with them, and they're happy to put us all in the same communication. And I think that customers want to see that we are internally collaborating and that their information is not getting lost in the shuffle. They like
Yeah.
to see that everyone, I mean, who wouldn't want a team of people working on their business?
That's right.
I mean,
Mhm.
it really does give that white glove experience to them.
Yeah, and how important has it been to your personal journey, collaboration and working within a company or teams that really get that? You know what I mean?
It's huge. I
Yeah.
think I've learned more in my career in the experience of transportation in the time that I've spent here. And I think it is because I am learning about the ins and
Mhm.
outs to all the other parts. And I can thank Emerge for the fact that I get to be a part of the startup, because if maybe they were already figured out, I wouldn't get to come over and sit for an hour and collaborate with accounting on how we should work through issues on billing. And then maybe I wouldn't get to sit with the product side and understand exactly how our platform works.
Right.
So I definitely feel that we're a part of something bigger here. And I think that's what ultimately brought me here to begin with.
Nice. And as a woman, what has your experiences been? I mean, you've been in a few male dominated industries. You mentioned earlier a thick skin. So what has that looked like for you?
Well, I mean, sure, there's times where I may have been passed up for a promotion, or I might have been um, not acknowledged for an idea, or maybe even interrupted in meetings. And I would have to say, like, my experience from the start, like looking back, because you can look at yourself 10 years ago, what did I think of that type of atmosphere? And I would say, like, I might have been jaded then and thought, oh, well, it's because I'm a woman, you know,
Mm,
or, they don't want to hear what women have to say. But you know what? I think looking back, it was an immature way of thinking. And I think today, like, I wouldn't want to use that excuse, because ultimately, I think we teach people how to treat us. And I think hard work pays off, and teamwork also pays off. And people will ultimately see you for who you are, not whether you're a woman or a man. And I think my background and the other positions I have had have taught me that, despite of being a young woman or a young man, I have the opportunity to advocate for myself and get to where I want to be by just being me.
yeah.
And I would have to say, like, my experiences in the past, I feel like there were times that maybe I was overlooked, but that was by women as well. So I would like to
Mhm.
think that, and point out that I think a lot of women just need to be better to each other and uplift each other in this industry as well as all over. I think that we can be a little hard on each other as well.
Yes, and make it what you want it to be, right? And thank you for sharing that, because it's always great to get different perspectives as to what that's looked like and whether you do feel and it's okay either way. Whether you do look back on it and think that maybe that was because I was a woman, or maybe just because, it just wasn't right for me or something like that. Everybody has different experiences, and it was great that you could share that with us. And so, is there anyone in the industry or maybe out of it that you've really looked up to that maybe inspired you personally or professionally, maybe a mentor, or maybe even helped elevate your voice or open doors along the way?
So I'd have to say that, when I was in college, I went to junior college first. I went to LCC in Lansing, and I had a professor there that taught a East Asian history class, and he was the one that essentially wrote me a letter of recommendation and introduced me to that Japan studies program that I went in 2000. So I would have to say that I always look back on that professor as the reason why I have, or I am where I am today. I think, if it weren't for that trip, and it really did open my eyes. And, from there I kind of was able to go on this fun journey of traveling and moving to a bigger city, and all of that played a part in where I am today. I think that there's a lot of people in the different roles and different companies that I've worked for that have been influential, but no one as much as Mr. West from Lansing Community College.
Well, and teachers are so
Yeah.
important, and I'm so glad we're giving a shout out on Let's Talk Supply Chain to a teacher, because I don't get that very often, and that is a
Yeah.
very, very, very exciting. So, what does the future hold for you and for customer success as we continue to manage disruption in supply chain?
Oh, well, I think the future will take me where it's supposed to take me.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I don't, I think that as long as I'm doing the next best thing and I'm staying true to myself, and I continue my work ethic and working hard, then I'll continue to be blessed. I definitely love where I'm at now. I'm able to collaborate and coach up other people here in my industry, and I feel like I'm helping to influence others, and that there's nothing more rewarding.
I love that. Well, finally, then, and I really don't want this to end because I think you and I could talk for a very, very long time. But what is some advice that maybe you would give to maybe some other leaders in supply chain, maybe some girls looking at supply chain as a career, or maybe other women that are just in the space that you would just want to give some advice to?
Well, I saw this meme the other day, and I think it's probably because it's, National Women's Month. But I'm not going to be able to quote it, but I sent it to I have a 15-year-old stepdaughter. Her birthday's today, actually.
Nice.
And I sent it to her instantly because I really resonated with what the message was. And it was essentially about not going through life trying to be accommodating and
Hmm.
as convenient as possible, and to speak your mind even if your voice shakes. And I think that that was like really powerful because there's lots of times where I might just be really passionate about a topic, or just, to a point where I feel like I'm needing to speak up, and I suddenly turn out to be loud, or my voice will shake and people will think I'm upset. And I hate to hear other younger girls, maybe even within my office, that don't want to raise their hand or ask a question or to speak up, or they feel like maybe what they're going to say is stupid. Like
Yeah.
I hate to hear that, because I really would love to empower everyone if I could, and just to have that big voice and to speak up, and don't be worried about how you're perceived as a result. Like, just because you have a louder voice, or you're asking questions or reaching out, it doesn't mean you're difficult to work with, or you're perceived as maybe pardon my French, but a bitch, or someone who's not approachable.
Yeah.
I want to be able to help people have that voice, and to just know their inner beauty.
We need way more leaders like you in
Thanks.
supply chain. And what a shame to bring, our conversation to the end. I mean, I really enjoyed talking to you. It was fascinating to hear your journey into supply chain, through supply chain, but also dive into some of the wider trends in the industry like collaboration, diversity, and of course what you're working towards with customer success. So I hope that's provided some real insight and inspiration for our listeners today. I am pretty sure that it has. And
Thank you.
Marty, you are amazing. Thank you so much for joining me for our Woman in Supply Chain
Thank you,
series.
Sarah. My pleasure.